Hey, welcome to the New Home Insights podcast by John Burns Real Estate Consulting. I'm Dean Worley, your host. Each episode, we're going to bring you some of the best minds in the housing business talking about some fascinating topics or trend or innovation or issue, just like the one you're about to listen to. Enjoy. Hi, this is Dean. The episode you're about to hear was recorded at our Design Summit event back in February of this year. So that was before COVID-19 hit. So please keep that in mind as you listen to this podcast with Dan Clements and Jessica McConnell from Whirlpool. It's a fascinating podcast. But since it was before COVID, we have Dan back for some follow-up questions just to see how things have been going since COVID has hit. And that immediately follows the original podcast with Dan and Jessica. So stay tuned for that. And please enjoy this discussion with the Invisible Kitchen from Whirlpool. Okay, so we're going to talk today with Dan Clements and Jessica McConnell from Whirlpool. And let's start with the story about me, because obviously. And so I've recently, my wife introduced me to the Great British Bake Off. Anybody watch Great British Bake Off? Love that show. Still sad about Mel and Sue leaving. It's fresh to me. And even though it happened like 5 years ago. So I've been more comfortable in the kitchen, been a little bit more of a kitchen person than I ever have been before. So we're going to go into the kitchen now with Dan and Jess and talk about a concept they call the invisible kitchen. So really, which is kind of about how not so much how appliances are changing for the sake of appliances, but how appliances are changing to be sort of seamless with the kitchen, and how hopefully that makes sense. They'll make way more sense than I do. So actually, let's start though by having you two actually introduce yourselves.
Sure. Hi, everyone. It's great to be here with all of you today. My name's Dan Clements. I am the Senior Director of the Advanced Design Studio and Global Brand Studio at Whirlpool. We work on developing the future roadmap for all of our brands globally, as well as all of the type of future experiences that we want to create within those brands. Within our brand team, we focus on the first 1 to 5 years out. Our advanced design team focuses more 5 to 15 years from now. So we're really kind of pushing towards what's going to drive our future for each of our brands along the way.
Hi everybody. I'm Jessica McConnell, and Dan's my boss. And I'm the Director of Advanced Design, and I'm responsible for the Advanced Industrial Design team, Advanced Color and Finish team, and an Advanced Graphic Design group, all working together to create the future. I've been at Whirlpool for 8 years now. I've started off career as a color finish material designer, where I've worked on consumer electronics and appliances, but my passion is really the kitchen, not only cooking, but also the design of it. It's something that I just live and breathe.
Before we get to kind of the meat of what we're going to talk about, let's just talk about kind of, for lack of a better term, your methodology. It's kind of the how you do what you do and how you discover the things you discover.
Good question.
So if anybody's ever done any trend forecasting, it's a very similar process to what others do. You're taking a lot of insights around you, sort of taking in insights, but you're also looking at high-level social cultural trends. So these are political things, environmental things that are impacting people's lives every day. And from there, you go into sort of consumer trends. So how are consumers responding to these influencers in their lives, the things that they cannot control, what is going to cause them to do, and so forth. And then from there, you'll look at technology trends. You kind of have all of these little bubbles of information. And then from there, you do what's called scenario planning, where you kind of take those things, put them together and say, okay, if X and Y happen, what will happen here? And you start to sort of try to predict the future by doing it that way. The same thing is done for color. You translate social cultural trends into aesthetic themes, which sounds like maybe voodoo magic, which maybe some of it is. But
it kind of is.
Yeah, it is. But the funny thing is, when we do these processes of color forecasting, we're usually right on. So it does really work, oddly enough.
We can talk about voodoo if you want. I'm flexible. We can switch it up. So let's start with the kind of the concept, just kind of the bare bones of the concept. When you say, again, I'm more of a kitchen person now, but I'd be lying if I said I'm a kitchen person. Can make pretzels, still can't make anything else successfully, by the way. What do you mean by that concept of the invisible kitchen?
Right, so the idea of the invisible kitchen, we really made a statement about that as a provocation to get people's interest and to bucket all of the trends, insights that Jessica was talking about into a bundle so we could help people to understand the way we want to shift the way consumers think about our products and the way we think about the way our products integrate with our consumers' lives in a day-to-day basis in the future. It's also a great place for us to look to the past. I think today there's been a lot of great conversations about the history of the kitchen. And if you think about it over the past 100 years, it's evolved very slowly and methodically, starting from kitchen appliances in the kitchen spaces in the early 1900s is purely functional space and separated off from the rest of the home. Moving on towards, the development in the 20s, 30s, and 40s around the work triangle and the efficiency of appliances to help allow people to do things, empower them in their day-to-day lives. And then you had mid-century, which, was this sort of let's bring the kitchen space into the rest of the home and the way in which food relates to every aspect of the things we do within the home day to day. But since then, honestly, it hasn't changed a whole lot. So we're using this invisible kitchen as a means for us to take the idea of the kitchen, which when you think about what the kitchen is, immediately we have an unconscious bias about it. So we throw that out and say, if we're no longer thinking about that, then what role in the future do we play, given all the technology that's going to be available, as well as various ways to access food, that we're going to be relevant and valuable to the consumer in the future?
You guys didn't know you're going to have a brief kitchen history, did you? I don't think, well, now you have, so you're welcome. So let's talk about then, I guess, the motivation. What is it that is motivating folks to want to have this kind of more seamless, integrated, invisible kitchen?
So the first two big ones, first is the open floor plan kitchen, which isn't going anywhere. It does one thing that is kind of annoying, which it creates visual clutter. When you have one big open space, you have all your stuff sort of staring at you. And then on top of that all, you have this desire for personalization and showing off your prized items with open shelving. Pair that with just your life, where you have your stuff and dishes laying on the counter, and it can be very overwhelming. So we play a part in some of that visual clutter, and we know that we can help to decrease that through some design features, and also where we think things will go in the future is if the appliances really become more de-emphasized in that space, we're helping to clean up that clutter and leave room for people to showcase their personal items and decor, not the appliance so much. The other one is a sort of backlash to high-tech looks. I think we're coming out of this phase of blue lights and shiny black glass was really deemed high-tech. People are now looking to sort of de-tech and celebrate mindfulness and so forth. And the black screens and blue lights and flashing information is not desired anymore. It's distracting. And so appliances are full of screens and black glass. So we do see that reducing some of that would be supporting the invisible kitchen.
Let's talk about something a little more. Let's get into the specifics. The specifics, I suppose, is what are some of the ways that appliances are changing or becoming more, I guess, more seamless. And you mentioned colors a second ago. Color is a big part of how appliances are changing.
It's a huge part. Yeah, and it's really the first step, and it's the first thing that we can do. I want to say easily, but it's not that easy. But it's the easiest of things to start with is color. And if, going back in history, there were some great colors out there. And actually in the 70s and the 60s, appliance color was a big part of integrating with the rest of the home in the kitchen. It was almost like one big furniture piece. Avocado goes with so many different wood tones. It's a very flexible color. And then you saw in the 80s and 90s, basically nothing. The appliance just became kind of like a neon sign in the kitchen. It's either bright white or shiny black, and it's just sort of this thing, imposing thing standing there. So really softening up the colors brings it more kind of harmony into that kitchen space between appliance and cabinets. So in 2015, we launched Black Stainless, which is our KitchenAid color, which we've now expanded to Whirlpool. That color was designed to be not really black. It's sort of a light black, and it's a matte finish, and it has very warm undertones. So it pulls in those wood tones, so it can actually make a wood kitchen feel more cohesive. We did the same thing with Whirlpool with our Sunset Bronze collection. It is a warmed up stainless steel. It has a little bit of a champagne hue to it. It's very subtle, but it is designed to pull in the wood tones and create a more harmonious look between cabinet and appliance.
And I think a really great example here with this new line of Whirlpool products is that, and it may not seem big to everyone in the audience, but it was for us in terms of thinking inside the company around how do we create that seamless integration from a physical design standpoint? And what you'll notice with this design is the hardware is lighter, more delicate, and more responsive to the hardware of the kitchen. The design lines are cleaner, more architectural, less about us designing something that we're proud of in terms of surfacing like you would an automobile, and more about the way in which it fits in with the space and blends in beautifully and finds harmony between the environment and the physical product.
How far can that seamlessness go, though? I mean, how much? I mean, at some point, does the kitchen maybe become intrusive to the rest of the house, or do today's consumers really want that to be just extreme, I guess?
Well, I think that's something we were starting to see in the house presentation, and I don't know if you saw it as well, but it's like consumers don't know yet what they want, and they're starting to find these blends between living space, entertainment space, cooking space. And really the only problem we have, and I guess we can talk about it a little bit later, is that we're not working together enough. There's nothing I can do to change the way cabinets are installed or the way we design these spaces. I work on the appliances. So there's a huge opportunity in terms of the way we can all work together to deliver to the consumer things that they didn't know that they wanted.
Is avocado still a thing? Avocado toast I know is, I understand. But is avocado still, I mean, what are the hottest colors for you? Going back to that.
So yeah, actually, yes, green. And you can see right here, green is really big. And we'd seen in previous years sort of navy blue was a really big color for cabinets. And also I take care of a lot of the KitchenAid stand mixer colors too. So we're always looking at these things. Green is really huge. We actually launched a stand mixer a couple of years ago, avocado cream. It actually did quite well for us. It was an updated avocado, but we're actually seeing all shades of green really coming into play in the kitchen, and it's a sign of vitality and re-energizing. It's tied to health and wellness, so it makes sense that it's a color that's coming to the forefront.
Do you see big, bold colors? We had a podcast recently with Nina Sichnava with House, and Lisa spoke from House also earlier, but she was talking about how really bold colors are actually starting to become, they're trending upward, like blues and hunter greens and things like that. Do you see that happening with you guys?
Yep, absolutely. So as much as you see sort of sophisticated tones, you also see a lot of really bright hues, and I think that plays into people wanting less sort of cookie cutter expressions. They want something that is uniquely theirs, and if they have a very gregarious personality, then they're going to show that off in the colors that they use in their home. And there's new ways, and kind of the rules are broken around how you use those colors, where you can put it just on the island or just on the uppers or just on the lowers and create a focal point in the kitchen with color.
I want to mention, this really warms my heart. This is not our photography. This is something we found on Instagram as a blog, and we spent 6 years of our life delivering this, and to see it in the wild and to see someone utilize it in a way that we intended it to be used as a democratization of design. This is a low-high budget renovation kitchen, and to see them use our products in the way that we wanted them to be used is just, really touching to us.
You're a parent. You set your children free.
That's right.
To make terrible decisions.
You don't get to control it, but you hope they do the right thing, and they did.
But they usually have poor judgment. So let's finish up with the design part. Are things becoming more, it's all about being streamlined, being seamless? Is that what's happening here with the overall, the larger, bigger picture design?
Yeah, so as the exterior of the appliance becomes less of the brand aesthetic, I think in the past when we used to do appliance design, it was very much like, how can we make this look like Whirlpool, and like do a lot of extra whiz-bang things. Well, that is no more the conversation. The conversation is the interior of the product, and that is where we see the future going. That is where your brand expression is, and that is where you can have a real wow factor, because it's closed door most of the time, so it's not really obtrusive with anybody's existing decor or cabinet. And so it can really be a delighter as you open up the doors. So a good example of this is something that we did and launched several years ago with Jenn-Air is the Obsidian interior. It's a matte black metallic interior. It is absolutely a wow factor when you open it up, when it doesn't have any food in it. It is very sexy. But then when you put food in it, and this is how it was designed, it was inspired by jewelry boxes. We completely rethought refrigeration. It's not a clinical hospital space. It is a precious space, like a jewelry box or a Dutch painting, if you will, where what you put in there really pops. So we want to celebrate your things, your items, those things that you love, the food that you are excited to prepare. And that's the goal of this color, was to make everybody's food look amazing, but also look beautiful first time.
I also want to mention, I actually was just at Modernism Week in Palm Springs, and there are a number of houses that our new Jenn-Air product was made a part of the renovation. And so we're at a party, and I'm standing by the Obsidian column refrigerators, and a designer walked up and looked at it and said, who would have thought that appliances could be this sexy? And I said, well, we did.
That's twice.
It was a beautiful moment.
You guys have used the word sexy twice now. Just. By the way, I can't identify most of the food in that refrigerator. That's my fault.
Well, the next one gets even more sexy.
I want to see the next one. Is that the burlesque?
There's more sexy.
Okay.
Yeah, it's this one. I don't know if it's showing up very well. This is what we call burlesque. It's a deep red interior.
It's redder than that on Google.
Yeah, it is. It is incredibly sexy. And then we have a sort of alligator, sort of inspired glass patterned air tower in the back in the same metallic deep red color.
You can't go much redder than that, can you? Because then it looks like it belongs at the hotel from The Shining, and it's scary.
We were in this. This is one thing. Like we design the colors to make food look good. So when we design the color, we have a set of like fake steaks and fake lettuce that we put next to the colors to see how delicious it makes them look. And so we tweak our colors based on that. But this is a limited edition, by the way. There's only 13 of these available for purchase.
And we wanted this vibe 13?
To be 13?
Why
Literally
13? Because we like unlucky numbers. We're rebels like that.
Okay. Sorry. Go ahead.
We wanted this to have a vibe, to have a destination, and the destination was basically a brothel.
Yeah, we had.
You guys have an way more interesting job than I realized.
It was a red velvet, so we were kind of thinking of those sort of speakeasies with red velvet lined booths and so forth, and it was kind of an exclusive take on that. Yeah.
Okay, we should be in Vegas, or counties north of Vegas. Now let's talk about sort of, again, your crystal ball. We love to do crystal balls here at John Burns Real Estate Consulting. Tell us about what you think is going to be happening with appliance. What are some trends you see coming down the road?
So we believe that panel-ready appliances will become mainstream. We see it. It's been in the luxury space for many, many years. It's actually quite common in Europe. We believe that will start to come down to the mainstream. And by panel-ready, this is essentially the refrigerator, the dishwasher, even cooking products are fully paneled and hidden. And that is probably a big statement to make. But we do believe that it is something that people will desire as part of open, and small space kitchens will drive some of that, because the small space kitchens need to serve multiple purposes beyond just a kitchen, and so that'll be some of the things there. And then the techlash, the sort of backlash to technology, black, shiny surfaces and screens the desire for that will be gone.
I want to kind of, so you're talking about just that very techie looking interface, right? You're not talking about technology and interfacing with your appliances. That's still huge and growing, am I right?
Yeah, that'll be there, but it has to be something a little bit more silent and more predictive. So we believe, and currently where things stand is people don't necessarily trust the technology. They don't believe that it's working in the background in your favor. In the future, people will have that trust, and we call it sort of the butler, the invisible butler. And this is all of your products, not just appliances, working in symphony in the background, aggregating information from various services and platforms to better predict and provide solutions to whatever it might be that you need before you know you need it.
And folks might be doing that through like apps, something like that, or will it be
intelligence, automation,
it won't be
sensor packages that we're developing internally that are going to drive that humanizing of technology where it's seamless, where it's intelligent, intuitive.
How long before we can control our refrigerator with our mind? Is that
would be amazing. I don't know how long, but I've definitely thought about it.
TBD.
That's three ideas I've given you. But then again, you've talked about brothels, so
yeah. And other than brothels, mindfulness. I think there's been a lot of talk about things getting bigger. I think we've reached peak capacity, especially with appliances, almost to the point of going too far. And what we're seeing, especially with the procurement of food changing and the ability to have food delivered quickly, we're going to see, I think, a retraction on the necessity to have high capacity refrigerators and all of these types of things that have, I think, driven the appliance industry for so long and in a lot of ways impacted our ability to create a kitchen that's, has appliances that fit in appropriately and blend in beautifully.
In 30 seconds, what would you do different? What do you want to see done differently going forward in your industry?
Yeah, well, I'll let Dan speak to that.
So like I alluded to earlier, I think what needs to change is we need to stop protecting all of our ideas and hiding them from each other. We are all partners in creating this space, which is the home. And we're not going to get to the destination we need to get to unless we find ways of reaching out to each other and developing what's next together. And you guys valuing appliances and wanting to work with us and vice versa, so we can, help to get consumers ultimately what they want. If we're selfish and protect what we have and not share more, then I think we're all going to lose in the end.
All right. Thank you, Dan and Jess from Whirlpool. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks for listening to that podcast with Dan Clements and Jess McConnell from Whirlpool. That was done, as we mentioned up front, prior to the impact from COVID-19. We have Dan here to follow up on some of those issues as we are still in the midst of the impact of COVID-19. Dan, please say hi to the folks.
Hi, everyone. Good to be with you again.
So we're going to run through just a few of the key things and just see how those trends may have changed, or actually maybe not changed now in this kind of new world we have. Dan, let's start with the first one, the biggest one, the invisible kitchen, this trend toward it's less cluttered and a kitchen where appliances are less obtrusive maybe and more seamless. Is that still going strong with COVID, or is it even going stronger?
Well, I think before I address that question, it might be good to take one step back really quick and talk about, the way in which, our trends were influenced and how COVID has changed that, because I think that's going to help the conversation with some of these questions about what we shared at the summit. And so first of all, what was influencing our trends coming into this early this year was, the generational shift of having Gen Y and Gen Z, getting a seat at the table and entering the conversation in the way in which their thoughts and ideas around the way they expect their home to be actually influencing the conversation. I think, for the first time where we're really all, taking it truly seriously. And, they, from that angle, they were living lives that, are influenced by technology, social media, always on, a lot of expectations and a lot of noise in their life. And I think they were already thinking about ideas like well-being and this notion that your home is a sanctuary and a place for you and your friends to have a safe place, to interact, to represent your values and, what you care about and to be a place that facilitates all of your needs. The thing that's happened since then is, I think, aside from the discussion being driven by them, now we have COVID, which has basically disrupted every aspect of everyday life, which is a really important point in the sense that it's forced everyone to go back and ask themselves some fundamental questions, very basic things. What can I control in my life? How do I get what I need? Who and what can I trust, along the way? And, those are basic ideas. And now as we've been living in this space, it wasn't 2 weeks that we were living at home. Now it's, gone on 6, 7, 8 months in some circumstances here. So, we know that when you do something for 3 months or longer, it becomes, it shifts, your behaviors. It shifts your mentality. And so, people have found, in this time, the one thing that they can trust is their home. It's become the sanctuary for everyone. And it's also become kind of the Swiss Army knife for life. And so, although it starts as something that's a necessity, after a while, and this probably has happened with you and the listeners, you start to think, how do I make this something sustainable, something that, I can find enjoyment in, that I can, be at home all the time and have it serve all of my needs in a way that not only serves the functional needs and the necessities, but also my emotional needs and a sense of well-being and happiness. So as it pertains to the invisible kitchen, the whole notion there was this idea that we make appliances that serve an important function. And certainly COVID has reinforced the idea that our work matters in a major way. But we've always felt like it's not our job to always be at the center of attention. We want our products to integrate seamlessly with life and fit in anywhere in the home where they're relevant. So, it was true then in the sense that, millennials and Gen Z were, concerned about, their home and the space within it and its function and, rethinking, the way that worked. And that's still going on now. We've gone from open floor plans where we just got these big open spaces. And I think now that people are working from home and doing school and, this becomes the hub for all of your activities, you realize you have to segment things down and you have to make spaces work in multiple ways. So even within the kitchen, the idea of making appliances take a back seat and be more integrated in a way that space can flex beyond just the functional need of creating a meal for your family, but also serve other purposes, perhaps an office or otherwise. I think that's why, from that perspective, the idea that invisible kitchen is still relevant.
It's funny you mentioned that because it is really the kitchen is really the focus or the location of that hominess, right? So
Right.
home is the place you're safe and you're trusted. And the kitchen is is really the center of that within the home.
Yep. And we've always found too that, food is just a catalyst for conversation and connection. So, and that's been true here, in these times as well. It serves not only substance, but helping to provide emotional needs as well and connection to others. And, and I think that's also a reason why the kitchen, is and will remain, however, that place where people gravitate to and want to spend their time. So you want that to be as comfortable as possible. And we'd like our products to only stand out in ways that are relevant to their needs.
And maybe that's the only reason meatloaf still exists is that classic comfort food.
You got to love it. Yeah.
Because otherwise, not a good case for it. In terms of, so we talked about in the podcast folks just listened to, we talked about color trends and how brighter hues and, designed to make food look better is. So I'm assuming that's still something that you're concerned with.
Yeah, I think, again, kind of going back to the last question, it's, this focused attention on the home and the variety of needs it has to serve, makes attention to the color and material and aesthetics even more important. This is going down to two things in terms of, bold colors and, I guess more polarizing aesthetic choices. We actually are seeing people make investments in accent pieces, statement pieces, buying a refrigerator with, a leather door panel on it because, they want to be unique. And, this is their home and they're spending a lot of time in it, especially now. So they're willing to kind of get away from that mentality of I'm buying this home as a resale value investment piece to something that actually is designed for things that make me happy. Now, on the other side, we're seeing a shift from boldness towards more muted colors. And again, this gets back to this idea of well-being and the notion that, how do we use color as a means of helping to set a mood or a vibe, within our home. And so we're seeing, more of a shift towards, inky blues and muted tones, which help to soothe and kind of create a space that's, comforting and inviting and relaxing.
So you're saying avocado is still dead?
Yeah.
Thank God. Technology, we talked about sort of the end of the black screen and at least becoming more muted, more in the background. Are folks still looking for that?
Yeah. I mean, the technology is an inevitability. It's, humans were hardwired to just remove complexity from life. That's just what we do. And that's why we're obsessed with innovation. And so, it's just inevitable the way things are going that, with the proliferation of, smartphones and other devices, which are all connected and can allow you to control and have access to a multitude of devices within your home, to automation and artificial intelligence, and the way in which in the coming years it's going to take over more and more of the mundane tasks that, previously you as a user would have to hold that knowledge in your head and be able to have that interaction. So I guess long story short is, the way things are heading, I think the next 10 years you're going to see tremendous change in terms of the way in which you interact with any product within the home. But yeah, especially from an appliance standpoint, you're going to see a lot more intelligence, automation, and the use of the various ways in which you can interact with the product, from voice to other devices, doing the heavy lifting, again, to kind of help remove any unnecessary clutter or unnecessary interactions.
And voice too. My next question is
Voice, yes.
the touchlessness. The touchless appliance. I mean, that's just going to be into overdrive. And will we see more voice activated to everything, or is it going to be infrared, or where does that stop? What can't be touchless? Can refrigerator, Alibaba and the fridge door opens, and CRISPR and the CRISPR door opens. I mean, why not?
And I think often people think of it as it's going to be this or that, and I would say you're just going to see a lot of diversity, in a lot of different contexts. So there's going to be places where you're still going to want that analog connection. Sometimes psychologically you want to have some control over what you're doing, or a feeling of control. So there's still going to be ways to connect with the product and with the experience, for sure. I think as it pertains to voice, there's a lot of great benefits to that in terms of, hands-free interaction and a more intuitive and natural conversation with objects and within the home. But it has its limitations too. You don't want to read your texts out loud. Often there's certain circumstances where, voice is not a desired way to, input information. So
Yeah.
it's all contextual, but you're going to just see a proliferation of different ways in which people interact with products. And sometimes, based on their specific needs, or tailored to the way that they prefer to interact with it.
It's funny you say that, because we were over at a friend's house and she asked Alexa to tell her like what packages she had coming. I'm thinking you might maybe not want to do that
Yeah.
out loud. Sorry.
Yeah. Sometimes it's not appropriate. So
How about
context matters.
Context does matter. What are you doing to make things more germ friendly? I mean, obviously that's just a huge consideration. Is that a focus for you folks?
It is. As always, we're looking into ways, to make things easier to clean, products safer to use. We've got teams working on various ways we can use existing technologies that we have available to us. Different types of finishes that we've developed over the years that maybe, didn't come to market because of cost reasons and a lack of, consumer desire for it. We're obviously looking at ways in which we can address those types of needs from our customers. I would say though too that I'm really appreciative of the fact that we're not focusing our strategy moving forward solely on sort of fear-based tactics around COVID. We're really kind of focus more on understanding the motivations behind the changes we're going to see in consumers' behavior, and then look to the future at the ways in which, some of that might motivate, their needs or desires coming out of this. Hopefully, we come out of this. If we don't,
Yeah,
all bets are off. But
that's true.
we're looking at its appropriate role as a part of the larger equation of how we address consumers' needs moving forward.
I'm glad to hear that you're not going to do it fear-based. Like,
Yeah.
buy this Whirlpool appliance or you might die. You don't love your family if you don't buy our product. That's good.
Yeah, and
The
I think there's a lot of companies who can kind of fall into that,
Yeah,
easy trap of let's use what's happening right now, to drive sales. And I don't think that's the approach we've been taking as a company, which has been really nice to see.
I'm glad to hear that. We talked about refrigerators getting smaller. Might that be something that's going to change now, or has already changed now? And like refrigerators and pantries getting bigger for stocking up.
Right. So yes and no. We've seen in the early months from lockdown, consumers purchasing a lot of necessity items. These would be freezers and basic appliances, this type of thing. Obviously, the heavier use has caused appliances that were maybe close to breaking. They would break, and they're replacing more on the functional needs. And certainly from refrigeration, there was an initial reaction to stock up and stockpile. And some of that isn't going to go away, and I don't want to dispute. Depending on family size, and the context of your needs, you may need more space than you did before. But what we're seeing is in the 10 years I've been at Whirlpool, we've passed peak capacity for refrigerators or any of our appliances in general. I mean, to the point where us and our competitors have gotten to where you can no longer fit it through the door anymore. So we're getting to where it's limited by the physical constraints of the home. So we know we're to that point, and we're moving past it. And we're seeing a lot more of a movement towards counter depth refrigeration or French door refrigerators, and products that have a more sort of sensible scale relative to the overall size of the kitchen, and of relative importance, and distribution. So, this idea that you may need the capacity, but does it come from one appliance instead of, hey, maybe I have a small, beverage refrigerator in my office, and I have a chest freezer in the basement, and I have a French door bottom mount in my kitchen.
So you're not gonna do the IKEA way and have people get a refrigerator kit and put it together themselves in their kitchen. You're not gonna go there.
No,
That
no.
could be
Anytime we put it into their hands, we have problems usually. So we try
for
to
sure.
do that ourselves. So that's one way is sort of thinking about capacity in terms of distribution throughout the home based on the need and location and so on. The other way to look at it is through disruptions to the food procurement ecosystem. So, this is all of the new companies that are coming in and, radically changing the way that, we get food, get it from the grocery store, pre-made, often, and of course changes in the restaurant industry as well. So, I think there's a multitude of ways in which people can get access to the inventory that they need. And I think COVID is, shown us and pressure tested some of the advantages and disadvantages towards more long-term thinking and stockpiling versus which of these services and technologies hold up despite the challenges that are faced in terms of what the pandemic has put in place. So and that's not going away. So, and in fact, we see more and more of this. So, yeah, from our perspective, when you tie those two pieces together, we think that trend towards smaller is going to continue.
Dan, let's end with what we talked about actually at the end of the original podcast back in February, which was you're kind of a big advocate for teamwork in the industry. I'm assuming that's true now more than ever.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, if you think think back, the last big change that's happened in the housing industry was post World War II. And this idea that people were coming home, the world had been disrupted in a big way, probably, to some degree, the same way, in the way we're feeling today. And people were looking for homes, and there was a lot of opportunity. A lot of things were in the air, which allowed, some major changes and innovations in the way we live, and the thinking about the role of the home, and the way that companies work together to solve big problems, and use technologies that are available to them to rethink that the way people live and address the needs of a modern lifestyle. And I would say now it's true more than ever, because you couldn't find a more opportunistic time than now, where everything's up in the air for our companies to come together and solve some of the big problems that are difficult to solve individually, or difficult to solve just because of the infrastructure that's in place, and the consumer mindset and behaviors that have existed, and purchasing behaviors that have existed in the past. So it's kind of like the doors are open now to really rethink, what's possible, rethink what the modern home is, rethink what the modern community is, based on what people's expectations are, and what they're looking for, and what they're looking to do in terms of integrating technology into their lives in a different way. So absolutely, it was important then, and it's absolutely more important now than ever.
Yeah,
If
that's a good
anyone
point.
wants to work with us, we'd love to work with them. So
I hadn't thought about that, but you're right. Crises are kind of the best time to get change, to get real change, and that
yeah,
includes it in the home.
the mid-century modern period, which really, it's the residue of it is everywhere. From open floor plans to indoor outdoor spaces, kind of working in harmony. To that was the start of taking a freestanding range and deconstructing it so that you can cook and entertain guests at the same time. You can have your cooktop at the island, and you can have your oven against a wall, and have the appliances appropriately placed so that you can forge yourself to a new type of lifestyle. So I think that's kind of the place we're in now, is like, what can we do now that the restraints are off.
So built-in screens all over the kitchen, so you can have your Zoom meeting with family while you cook alone, quarantined in your house.
There you go.
That's free from Dean. That's all you're going
That's
with
a free idea.
Well, Dan, thank you so much for following up. That was great. That was as good or better than the original one, I'm going to say, that we did back in February. Thank you so much.
You bet.
Hey, thanks for listening to New Home Insights. This is Dean Worley. I was with Dan Clements from Whirlpool. Thank you, and see you next time.